Izuku Midoriya, a young boy born without a quirk in a world where everyone has one, dreams of becoming a hero. But what if he wasn't quirkless? What if he had the power to control nuclear energy?
It was finally, the end of Izuku's first week at UA, though it ended for him at a much later time than most other students. He ended up talking with All Might in that lounge room for a really long time, once All Might had finished recounting his tale. They talked about all sorts of things really, but how could he resist? It was All Might in person and they were the only two in the room. How could he not finally go down his list of things he'd always wanted to ask All Might while he was at it? Izuku was grateful that All Might decided to tell him about that incident though. Well, not knowing didn't keep him up at night. Not that that actually mattered anyway. It was nice to know what had really transpired that day. He really didn't like the thought of a villain that could match and even seriously injure All Might, but he had been thoroughly assured that the villain was killed during the fight. Izuku couldn't fathom All Might killing someone either, but that afternoon was a first in multiple ways it seems. It was only after arriving home in the dark that he realized he hadn't worked anything out for his spur-of-the-moment Gen Ed Sports Festival preparation plan, or GSFP for short, besides the basics he had come up with during the meeting. As such, he spent most of his Friday night working out details like asking who had enough experience to teach others combat or the actual location. After some more searching on UA-related websites, it became clear that Gen Ed really had a disadvantage. Support students were allowed access to their support studio and the testing grounds outside school hours, and Hero students were allowed in the Hero course training facilities outside of classes, but Gen Ed had no such luxuries. They were allowed access to UA's public library and swimming pool, like every student after hours, and apparently Gen Ed members of the Urban Parkour Club were allowed access to Ground Gamma under supervision 2 days of the week, but that was it. After a while of searching on the internet, Izuku was almost ready to tear his hair out and regret saying anything at the meeting. There were no places anywhere that could or would house more than 10 people at a time in Kurosato or the nearby Atami City and Ashigara-shima district, and there especially were no official places where you were allowed to use your quirk. Sometimes Izuku wished that Japan had adopted the recreational quirk usage licensing system from the USA, but alas. Just as the morning sun rose to blind Izuku and he was about ready to give up and spend the free day with his mom, he came across a pretty old article, and the cogs in his brain already started turning. He could feel an eager smile appear on his face as he sent the article along with some extra information to the student council group chat. That was how Izuku found himself sitting on a shoddy promenade wall at 8 AM on Sunday morning, staring at the ocean that was just about visible from behind the mounds of trash covering Dagaba Municipal Beach Park. So far only him and Koch-chan were present, but they had come extra early. Heo won a rep and resident Pomeranian. Both Izuku and Koch-chan looked around to see Ken waving at them as she approached. When I read the message saying you found a beach as a training place, I didn't expect it to be this interesting. Ah, don't worry Ken-san, I have my reasons. Koch-chan gave him a shove. Oi Izuku, stop acting like the local cryptid. Izuku decided they had enough time before others would show up, and decided to have some fun with his friend, and innocently blinked at him. Oh Koch-chan, didn't you know? My hair is fluffy because it's so full of secrets. He then ran into the trash piles as Koch-chan started charging at him. It wouldn't be for long, you little shit. About an hour later, Izuku stood on top of a particularly large mound of trash bordering the promenade, overlooking the people that had decided to show up. It was a surprising amount actually. More than 30 Gen Ed students had shown up, and that might even increase over time if he planned everything right. Looking to his sides, he saw Koch-chan and Ken as well as several people from one who he had asked for help. Yamomo, Ojiro, Shimjai and, shockingly, Todoroki. Izuku was surprised when Todoroki had immediately agreed to come, even though he hadn't even explained why he needed his help, nor had he even really interacted with Todoroki in the past for anything beyond hero lessons. Izuku looked back at the gathering of students on the promenade. He noticed a few familiar faces like Shinzan, as well as the Gen Ed representatives. And yes, that included Rikingaku, though she didn't look particularly impressed at her surroundings. When his phone's alarm went off, indicating it just turned 9 AM, Izuku tried to get their attention but didn't have any luck. After a few seconds he startled as a sudden loud sound came from next to him. Looking to his left he saw Ken had enlarged her hands as did her quirk, and had presumably clapped really hard. The sound and minor shockwave that created was enough to get everyone's attention, and Ken smiled at him as she stepped back and allowed him to do the talking. Alright, thank you all for coming at this hour on your free day. I'm sure you have questions for me, but let me give the basic rundown of how the next 2 weeks will go first. He spread out his arms as the morning sun shone on him from behind. This place is called Dagaba Beach, and me and the people next to me are willing to catch you up on some basic combat training during the morning and afternoon for the next 2 weeks leading up to the sports festival. Obviously none of this is mandatory, so you can leave at any point in time, nor do you have to come every single time. Izuku was surprised when nobody had interrupted him. Perhaps the past week has just conditioned me to expect that. Yeah, that's about it. I'm sure some of you have questions though, so go ahead. The Kingaku still didn't look impressed and was the first to raise her hand. Yeah, why this shithole? I'd expect the hero course would be able to find a less dangerous place to train us. Seriously, what if one of these heats collapse? And what if some of us didn't get our tetanus shot recently? Did you even think about any of that, or are you just mocking us? Izuku panically waved his arms in front of him. No, that's not it at all. Though you should definitely get a tetanus shot if you haven't had one recently. He righted himself before speaking again. There are several reasons as to why this place is ideal. He raised up a finger. Firstly, UA doesn't allow Gen Ed students on the training grounds, and there are no other places in your surrounding Kurosato that are willing to house this many people at once. More importantly though, none of those places allow for quirk use anyway. He raised a second finger. Which brings me to my second point. You people will probably want to focus on your quirks besides the combat as well, and this place is pretty isolated from any populated areas. It also has a lot of spots where you can train your quirk without others seeing you if you want to keep your quirk hidden for now. He raised his third and final finger. And lastly, there are currently about 30 of you here and only 7 of us. We have scheduled it so that there will be at least 2 of us present here every morning and afternoon for the next 2 weeks. But that won't be enough to teach everyone here simultaneously, so when you're not with one of us, you can still train your quirk on your own or help clean up some of this trash. From the group of students, Izuku could see Shinzen blanch before speaking up. Why would we need to clean up this trash? I'm starting to think Rukingaku's hunch was right. Before Izuku could answer, Koch-chan decided he didn't want to stay silent anymore. Cause you need to train those weak noodle arms of yours, you damn extras. Koch-chan glared at Shinzen. Lem guess, you have a powerful quirk you couldn't use on robots, and you're certain you'll get far enough in the sports festival by coasting on by with it. Shinzen's posture going rigid was enough of a sign that he'd been found out, but Koch-chan didn't notice or care, and went on before Shinzen could retort. Lem guess again, you were about to call me a hypocrite for coasting on by with my powerful quirk. Well, lem tell you that me and Zuku have trained our asses off to get our strength and quirks to where they are now. If I never practiced with my quirk, it'd still be a damn sparkler, and Zuku's would be a decent fucking heat lamp. So if you seriously think you can beat us when you probably can't even fucking lift us off the ground, then you're lucky you decided to come here. Yamomo was the next to talk. I have personally researched some training programs, and carrying around all these diverse shapes and sizes of waist will be the most beneficial in strengthening your body in a time frame like this one. Apparently everyone had decided to add their own piece as Ken spoke up last. Also, this will be a nice gesture towards the locals. If you want to be a hero, then you shouldn't forget something as basic as community service, you guys. Even pro heroes need to fulfill a minimum amount of community service hours every year if they want to renew their license. Deciding to finish everything up, Izuku chimed back in. And if you don't really care about those things, then think about it this way. If this beach is cleaned up, I'm sure the student council can organize a few beach parties during the summer months. Izuku internally smirked at his little bout of manipulation as all the Gen Ed students that still looked unconvinced suddenly perked up at his statement. He gave his signature bright smile. Well, I think that's all then for now. We only have 2 weeks, so let's make them count. If we want to get everyone here caught up to speed with combat training and clean this beach up in time, we'll have to go beyond. A loud chorus of plus ultra echoed across the municipal park as it signaled the start of the Gen Ed Sports Festival preparation plan. The rest of the day went by pretty fast. Since it was Sunday, they were able to keep going for the entire day. A few of Izuku's classmates eventually left halfway through, and several Gen Ed students departed and arrived every few hours. Despite the amounts of trash, nothing dangerous happened throughout the day. The person who got the closest to actual danger was Mate-chan, who had arrived halfway through the day and had been haphazardly scavenging the trash for any recyclable materials. Just because I have access to the best material at UA doesn't mean I get to slack off at home, 0.con. In the end, he had to save her from a fridge that was about to fall on her when she tried to pull out an entire engine block by herself. The sun was already close to setting that day as Izuku was doing his last spar. He has seen quite the range of experience from the previous Gen Ed students, but the 1D representative Tsukikuri was definitely holding out the best out of anyone. Izuku thought she was using her quirk, but given that her eyes always looked like a void, that probably meant that her quirk was always active, so he let it slide. He was quite interested in what exactly it could be though. Izuku stopped his attacks and backed up a bit. She's never gone on the offensive, and she always tries to keep her eyes on me no matter how I move, but whenever I'm about to go in for an attack, she glances exactly at where I want to get to, before it should even be visible, and goes for a counter. She also called her quirk déjà vu, didn't she? He got a hunch and decided to act on it. He dropped his normal fighting style and went for a more chaotic spur of the moment one instead. It definitely worked as he could see her eyes widening, and he started getting closer and closer with his hits. Eventually he jumped over a small pile of trash, hid himself and waited. The surprise attack he performed when she came into his view finally did the trick as he pushed her onto the sand. Holy wow, Tsukikuri-san, that was quite a final spar for me today. I was wondering if your quirk helped you out there. Not that I'm accusing you of cheating, of course. If you can't turn it off or you wanted to practice with it, then it's fine. The floating red dots that were her pupils focused on him as she stood up and brushed some sand off her clothes. Your assessment is quite right, Midoriya-san. During the meeting I said that I prefer to keep the details of my quirk secret, but given that you seem to have already figured out the specifics, and I believe you to be a trustworthy peer of mine, I do not mind indulging you. She paused, looked around for any stragglers, though there was only one more group left who were all sparring against Koch-chan at the same time, and then continued talking. The quirk that was bestowed upon me at birth is called Deja Vu. With it I can see the movement and position of any mobile object, exactly 1 second into the future projected within my field of vision. It is less of a future-seeing type and more so a predictive analysis type, given that more chaotical and unpredictably moving objects yield blurrier projections. That Sunday at the beach ended with Koch-chan dragging Izuku off as he continued rambling off questions to Sugikuri, and the sun was setting. Despite that, it was only the beginning of the 2 weeks leading up to the sports festival. Monday, April 12, 2151. The first heroics lesson in the second week at UA was already starting off interesting as Aizawa-sensei walked in, simply told everyone to get to Gym Gamma again, and promptly walked out. In the locker rooms, Kirishima decided to ask the question everyone had on their minds. Hey you guys, do you think we'll be fighting against those third years again? Kaminari-kan gave an audible shiver. Oh god, please no. I can still see Tagata smiling at me in my nightmares as he destroys my poor stomach and punts me into a wall. Boy, stop complaining, Pichu. Only reason you got clapped by Tintin is because you were fucking weak. Koch-chan shrugged and pointed towards Izuku. Besides, you didn't have it the worst. Izuku nearly got his fucking eyeballs poked out by that asshole. Everyone winced at that mental image and finished changing into their costumes after that. The upcoming heroics lesson turned even more interesting when Izuku noticed Ken and several of her classmates walking over the PE grounds in what were probably their hero costumes, and he sped up to greet her. Hey Ken-san, are you guys having a heroics class right now as well? She turned around and gave a smile. Midoriya. It's good to see a fellow representative. And yeah, we are. You have a nice looking hero costume. You should thank my support partner for that. Looking back on my old sketches, I'm actually relieved she decided to change some things. Before he could comment on Ken's costume, someone interrupted their conversation. Oh, how despicable, Ken, getting close to the enemy. Unless you are doing this to help us gain the advantage at the sports festival, of course, in which case I will forgive your transgression. Izuku looked at the source of the voice to see a teen in a dapper suit with bluish-gray eyes and short blonde hair. Seriously, what is up with the blondes at UA? Ken had also turned around and huffed in annoyance. Can you just drop it, Manama? You're the only one calling one of the enemy. We're just over a week in. The blonde guy, Manama, gave a cocky grin and struck a pose that looked like it came out of that old JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga. I'm just the only one that sees the truth. It's clear that those with less straightforward, more complex and technical quirks are put in 1B, and the ones with simple, more directly powerful quirks are put in 1A. That means that us in 1B are naturally superior with our quirk control, hahaha. Ken, who had somehow gotten close to Manama without Izuku or him noticing, chopped him in his neck, and Manama promptly fell to the ground. You just read that theory on a message board, and are using it as an excuse to put others down for your own confidence. Get your head out your ass and treat our sister class properly. After Ken picked Manama up from the ground, Izuku was surprised when he noticed that both classes were heading for Gym Gamma. Aizawa-sensei and another pro hero, Vlad King, who was probably the 1B homeroom teacher, standing in front. While they waited for the teachers to speak up, Izuku whispered to Ken. Hey, could you teach me that chop you just did? She smirked back at him. Sure, Midoriya, anything for a fellow representative. When we have the time though. Izuku suddenly felt a bloated feeling in his stomach again, which quickly subsided as the two hero classes quieted down. He looked forward to see Aizawa-sensei's hair falling again. I guess he tried getting everyone's attention but slipped up and forgot about Starboard. Oh well, at least now I know there's a bit of a grace period. Aizawa-sensei's gruff voice filled the gym. At least my class isn't the only one that's irrational this year. Either way, for 1B, refer to me as Aizawa-sensei. We'll be doing our first joint lesson of the year today, so play nice. Vlad King spoke up next in an even gruffier voice than Aizawa-sensei's. And for 1A, call me Kansas-sensei. This lesson wasn't planned until after the sports festival, but since there have already been some hostilities between both of the classes, Aizawa and I both agreed to move this lesson up in the schedule. Before either of them could continue, Manama interrupted. Excuse me, the hostilities were fully from 1A, Kansas-sensei. I merely wanted to introduce myself, but one of their hooligans, he gestured towards Koch-chan. Why, am I not surprised? Suddenly went feral and assaulted me. Furthermore, the irresponsible 1A reps were not present to keep him on a leash. It was only thanks to our own rep valiantly protecting me that I wasn't seriously injured. Ken had already appeared next to him again, and he flinched, probably from expecting another chop, but one didn't come. Manama, you were the one baiting him into attacking you. Well, that's his fault for being so easily provoked. Silence. Aizawa-sensei's voice somehow overpowered Manama's, and he seemed to be giving a sympathetic look towards Kansas-sensei. Keep your squabbles for fighting. However, this lesson will be a simple exercise without sparring. Find someone from the other class who has a quirk that you can combine with yours for a unique move, and show it off at the end of this class. Kansas-sensei finished the explanation. This isn't required to be a one-tone pairing between the classes, so some students will probably end up being paired with multiple people from the other class. As long as every student has a partner, in the end it will suffice. Aizawa-sensei decided to spice things up again by ending it with one more bit. Since there will be between 20 and 40 demonstrations we have to go through in the end, depending on how much overlap there is between partners, as well as some training to get the move working, I want you all to have found a partner within 20 minutes. If I don't see you practicing with your partner or partners after that time is up, you'll be given janitorial duties in the classroom for this term. Everyone from 1A started scrambling, and Izuku eyed Yamomo, who caught his gaze and solemnly shook her head. Crap, it's not a ruse this time. Izuku decided to quietly observe the 1B students demonstrate their quirks from a distance. I guess this is a pretty easy way of getting every hero student to know each other's quirks, and start making the classes work together. Eventually he noticed Monoma doing something similar to him on the other side of the gym, and he walked up to him. Hey Monoma-san, I wanted to apologize for Kakbakum's behavior. Normally I'm around to keep him on a leash, but I was on my way to the student council meeting. Monoma turned around and gave another cocky grin. If you think you can get me to reveal my quirk to you by playing nice, then you're mistaken. I do not get fooled so easily. Izuku paused and adopted a thinking pose. That wasn't my intention, but what if I explain my quirk to you first? He doesn't look convinced in the slightest. And if it turns out our quirks wouldn't work for this exercise, then I could tell you who from my class would be your best option, since I know all of their quirks. That way you'll only have to reveal the details of your quirk to 2 people from 1 at most, instead of potentially going through multiple of my classmates, before finding a good partner. Monoma gave an appraising look. I've heard rumors from some third years about a curly-haired first year that can give you an existential crisis about your quirk in 5 minutes, and I'm guessing that must be you. You must be one of the smartest in 1 of them. Not that that's saying much, but I'll oblige. Izuku flashed his signature smile. That sounds good, Monoma-san. I'll strip the house of my quirk, but effectively I can emit tons of light and heat, enough to turn the nitrogen in the nearby atmosphere into plasma, and manipulate it with my magnetic field. In response he got a smirk. I can tell that you skipped some pretty important details, but it doesn't matter. I tell you about my quirk, but I think I'll just show you instead. Monoma suddenly reached forward and grabbed Izuku's palm. Ha there drat, it's a stockpiler type. I knew that you were leaving you. Izuku could see the moment Monoma got woozy before he clutched his stomach. He suddenly got a hunch about what was happening, but had no time to think about it more. Aizawa-sensei, emergency. And that's how Izuku found himself sitting next to Aizawa-sensei, who had been erasing Monoma's quirk for the past 3 minutes, and was just out of Izuku's view to avoid erasing Starborn, with Monoma sitting across from him looking like a child that was cheated out of their ice cream, while Kansas-sensei was berating him. Damn it Monoma, how many times have I warned you already not to blindly copy someone's quirk without knowing all the details? Aizawa-sensei decided to tag team him. You better be prepared to pay for all the eye drops you're making me waste, brat. Deciding that spending the next however many minutes listening to someone getting berated wasn't gonna save him any time, Izuku spoke up instead. So Monoma-san, from what I'm hearing you can copy someone's quirk. He got a begrudging nod. That's awesome. Those are really rare. It's literally a 1 in a million chance that we actually have 2 meta-type quirks in one place. He gestured towards Aizawa-sensei and pulled out a notebook from the back pocket. So I hope you don't mind if I ask you some questions while we wait. Monoma didn't even get the chance to respond before he got assaulted by a stream of questions. Slowed down for you folks. Do you need contact with someone to copy a quirk or just their genetic material? Can you copy all quirks or only emitter and transformation types? Do you gain their quirk at their current state or from back when they first manifested? Do you also copy someone's vestigial mutations? Do you copy the contents of a stockpiling type quirk or just the base quirk? Do you get the secondary adaptations and resistances along with the quirk? Do you get any knowledge on what the quirk is or how to use it? Once he stopped he noticed that Kansas-sensei had already walked away, and Aizawa-sensei had resigned himself to his fate. Monoma looked overwhelmed but didn't get discouraged as he somehow managed to respond to every single question in order. I need contact with the actual user. I can sometimes copy mutant quirks, but only if the mutations are small enough, which is needed, since some emitter quirks use physical mutations to activate through. I get their quirks as they are now. I only copied the parts that make the quirk work, so no vestigial mutations. As I implied when I tried copying yours, I don't get the contents of stockpiling types. I get secondary adaptations, but only if they're part of the quirk and not acquired over time from constant exposure. I instinctively know how to trigger every part of a quirk, but won't know what it is. His cocky grin returned after that as Izuku was writing all the answers down. It appears you didn't ask all the questions though, so maybe you're not as smart as they say, but I'll be helpful and divulge you anyway. I can currently copy and hold 3 quirks simultaneously, but I can only use 1 at a time. I can switch between which one I'm using though. And I can keep a copy for up to 5 minutes. Izuku could tell that Aizawa-sensei had stopped using erasure call that told me that sooner, Brad. And was giving him a disapproving glare, but that didn't dissuade him from voicing an observation his brain had latched onto. From what I can tell of your quirk, those storage and time limits seem kinda weird. Monoma sneered. Oh, so are you telling me that I'm mistaken in such a basic part of my own quirk? Izuku quickly backtracked in response. No, I'm not saying you don't know your own quirk. I'm just saying that those limits seem arbitrary, and that knowing why they're the way they are might let you discover or reframe an aspect of your quirk that you could focus on in the future. Monoma still eyed him suspiciously, but Izuku continued. So I think it's obvious that the actual copying is a transformation type aspect. And since you have to copy a quirk's physical structure at the cellular level to use it, then that means that it's likely a true transformation subtype. The other subtypes being veil, i.e. an outer layer that forms to give you a different appearance, and illusion, i.e. manipulating someone's mind or senses to make them think you look like someone or something else. Though if you can't copy larger scale mutant types, then your transformation aspect might only be able to add a small amount of extra mass to your body, like Chakuraraka's finger pads or Ashido's horns. It makes sense that you can only use one quirk at a time, since your body can only transform into one state at a time. It seemed that Monoma was still following the logic, so Izuku moved on to his other observation. What doesn't make sense to me though is how you can store multiple copies at all, or why there's a time limit. True transformation quirks don't require an upkeep of the transformed state, since the transformation itself is the quirk, and it's just modifying your base body into a different state. As for the multiple copies thing, early quirk studies showed that human brains only have enough space to store the memory needed to use 2 quirks, and even at that the physical body would still feel the repercussions over time. Given that you can switch between 3 stored quirks, which also implies that the memory for controlling your own quirk is still present alongside the memory for those 3 quirks, it just seems impossible without you going brain dead. Izuku finally arrived to his conclusion right as Monoma seemed to object. So what I'm thinking is that you touching the user isn't just for storing their quirk's physical aspects and gaining them through transforming your own cells, but that you're also establishing a mental link with that user. In essence, your copy is outsourcing the control of your stored quirks to their original users. If you view your ability to use quirks as creating mental links, then your storage and time limits make a lot more sense. Mental links created by quirks degrade over time if they're not renewed, and those types of quirks also usually have limits to the amount of links they can make at once, though that limit can be improved through constant usage. Izuku came out of his zone and noticed Monoma looking stunned. To his left he heard Aizawa-sensei walking away while mumbling, "Forget about paying for my eye drops. This will be a suitable punishment." Remembering the similar situation with Kirishima, he pressed on with some advice. I think there are 2 things you should look out for in the future if my analysis is correct. First of all, true transformation type quirks can often work partially. So if you start paying attention to that part, you might be able to manifest 2 quirks that don't physically overlap and use them simultaneously. As for the mental links aspect, it's been shown that people who are aware of a mental link that's been put on them can either choose to degrade it faster or sustain it for longer. So if you tell your classmates, they should be able to extend your time limit for using their quirks. Though I think that would happen naturally over time anyway, as well as they'll subconsciously trust you more. Monoma seemed to come back to his senses after Izuku's word vomit stopped and gave another appraising look. Maybe some of you from 1 aren't that bad if they voted you as their representative. Though since our quirks definitely don't work together, I'm still waiting for your recommendation. Oh whoops, that's right. Let's see, your quirk really is difficult to synergize with others. The only thing I can think of is a move that can only be done if 2 people with the exact same quirk are present. He pondered for a bit longer as he gazed upon his classmates, who were all busy with others from 1B. Monoma-san, are germs earphone jack small enough for your quirk to manifest? He gestured at the girl in question so Monoma could see. I think those are near my limit, but it should be possible. Izuku flashed a sheepish grin. That's perfect, I already have a combo move in mind, but I'm sure you don't want me to do all the work, so get to it. Monoma rolled his eyes but approached Germ anyway, and Izuku realized he just wasted half of his own time, and frantically started looking for a quirk that could actually work with his own. Eventually the time for discussing and practicing was up, and everyone was showing off their combo move with their partner. Izuku managed to find a partner with plenty of time left to talk to Ken about the chopping move. Germ and Monoma ended up doing a move where they matched up the frequency of the emitted sound to create resonance and boost the shockwave, much more than just a single instance of the quirk could. There were a few uninspired ones as well, but at least they tried their best. Eventually it was Izuku's turn as Aizawa-sensei called for him. Midoriya, you're the last person, get your partner and show the move you came up with. Izuku walked forwards and motioned for the guy with extremely thick bushy white eyelashes. He had learned his name was Tetsutetsu when they talked, to join him. Tetsutetsu activated his quirk and turned his skin into steel, as Izuku used his magnetic field to keep the steel teen stuck to him, as he carefully started heating him up until he was glowing red hot. Izuku then reversed his magnetic field, and repelled the teen turned red hot projectile to the other side of the gym. Railgun. Tetsu stumbled back into the gym from the sizzling hole he had created in the wall, and gave a thumbs up. So manly. Courtesy of Kirishima, was hurt, and Aizawa-sensei gave an approving nod before finishing up. Alright brats, some of you could use more imagination, but everything was serviceable. It turned out that Izuku's conversation with Monoma was not enough to fully turn around his opinion on Class 1, as he spoke up again in a condescending tone. It's clear that it's our mediocre 1 partners that drag down the overall quality of today's lesson. You should have just let us make combo moves within our own classes, senseis. Koch-chan predictably fell for the bait again. Ha. Who the fuck are you calling mediocre, you damn copycat? Both classes groaned at the impending shouting match, and their senseis seemed ready to just leave and end the lesson. Izuku noticed Ken looking at him and giving him a nod that seemed to convey it's time to put your knowledge into practice, young Padawan, and the shouting match abruptly stopped as the sound of 2 synchronized chops filled the gym, followed by 2 simultaneous studs. The day wasn't done yet though, as Izuku was approached by Ken and someone from 1B with white hair and pitch black skin, after exiting the changing room. Heyo Midoriya, wasn't planning on talking to you anymore today, but Monoma verified some of the rumors we've heard, and Kurwaro here wanted to see for himself. Yes, my quirk is shrouded in darkness, and I wish for you to illuminate its hidden machinations. He really is like Tokoyami. Izuku backed off. Well, hold on, I don't know what you heard, but honestly those previous 4 times Ken gave him an incredulous look were just flukes really. There's no way that I would come across 5 different quirks with some previously hidden. He was interrupted by Kurwaro. I can merge myself with and traverse through any material that has been sufficiently tainted by the darkness, and emerge from them at will. After that short explanation, Izuku had immediately forgotten about his previous statement and went off. Oh wow. I've never heard of merging with objects before. What I'm assuming is the condition of the material being dark enough seems like a weird restriction. I can honestly only think of 2 natural processes where 2 things merge into one. One of those being fusion, but I don't see that just casually happening or being reversible, so the only other thing I can think of is light being absorbed and later being emitted by the electrons in atoms. You somehow have to be made up of solid light though to make that work. Izuku could see Kurwaro blanching, or turning gray in his case, but he had already gotten used to those reactions. Maybe that's why you're restricted to dark objects. Those absorb much more of the incoming light than lighter objects, so you'd lose less of your own light from getting absorbed. I guess you still lose some light though, so maybe your skin is pitch black to quickly replenish the mass lost between quirk uses. When he zoned back and Ken was giving him an I told you so smirk, and Kurwaro was lying on the ground, devastated. I'm just an imposter playing pretend in the void. Speaking of his class's version of Kurwaro, Tokoyami came out of the changing room and walked up to Kurwaro, pulling him up and giving him a hug. Do not fret, my fellow brother from the abyss, for it is the brightest lights that hide the darkest of shadows. Izuku and Ken suddenly startled from Aizawa-sensei's voice coming from behind them. This is all very touching, but unless you have an extracurricular club to attend after hours, then scram. I'm still looking for someone to fill the janitorial duties after class, and to help clear up that hole in Gym Gamma. He eyed Izuku with that statement. So if you'd like to spend the free time you obviously have for screwing around, then you can come with me to the Janito dot. And at that everyone fled the scene with one final bit of commentary from Tokoyami. What a mad banquet of darkness. Tuesday, April 13, 2151. Unlike the past 2 days, Izuku didn't go to the beach after classes were over to help the Gen Ed students. Yamomo and Ojiro were doing that today. No, instead he decided to do some of his own preparations for the sports festival. His session gathering information on the GESFP on Saturday had him discover an extracurricular club that he thought was interesting enough to attend. The meeting time and location were at the 2 classroom during Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, which is where Izuku now found himself. Izuku was about to go in when an unexpected encounter happened. Wow, Midori, wasn't expecting you here. You trying something out? He turned around and saw Ashido walking to him. Oh hey Ashido-san, you so formal, you're making me feel old Midori. Ermina-san, ZZZT try again, I'm not letting you continue until you make me feel like a cute girl again. The pout she put on definitely gave the impression of a little girl alright. Sigh, hi Mina-chan, thank you. I wasn't expecting to see you here either. The Urban Parkour Club isn't exactly advertised well, I only stumbled on it by accident. Ashido grinned. I've been doing parkour since middle school, Midori. It vibes well with my breakdancing, and sounds useful for hero work, so I checked if there was a club like that at UA and boom. Izuku didn't get any time to respond though as she started pushing him to the door. Come on Midori, let's get moving. I'm super excited to share this with the classmate. They entered the classroom to see about 7 people, all of who were clearly 2nd or 3rd years, standing in one big group and talking to each other. One of them was actually Mario-senpai, who immediately noticed their arrival and enthusiastically started waving. Hey look guys, we've actually got 2 newcomers, and I know these 2. A teen that had been standing in the middle of the crowd. The girl with puffy earrings and fluffy, shoulder-length hair with a slightly pink color which made it look like cotton candy, looked at them and gave a welcoming smile. It's nice to see new people coming here. My name is Muwata Fuwa, but you can call me whatever you like. We weren't actually expecting any new arrivals this early in the year, but we have some time left before Ectoplasm Sensei comes around, so we can give a quick introduction if you want one. Mirio-senpai picked up where she left off. It's good to see you two Kmise again. How'd you find this club so fast though? I didn't even know about its existence until after the sports festival in my second year. Ashido eagerly responded first. I've been doing parkour for a while, so I wanted to continue since it's really fun. Mirio-senpai then eyed Izuku, which probably meant he should respond as well. I accidentally found it when I was researching unrelated things. But I think I could get some useful skills here, and maybe refine my quirk use for cityscape traversal outside hero lessons if that's allowed of course. Fuwa-senpai giggled softly. Yes, that's what Ectoplasm Sensei is supervising for, since some of us aren't from the hero course. Well and it's because he can monitor us all individually in case something goes wrong. She then got a more serious look, though she still looked pretty serene. Back to business though, since you two are new I'll be supervising you for a while, until I'm convinced you know all the basics, and can move around safely on your own. Wait, does that make you the club president then? I thought it'd be one of the third years. Izuku decided to ask. It might look weird, but the founder graduated from UA last year, and they appointed me, since my quirk is pretty useful for all this, that's all though. I do want to make one thing clear from the get-go, especially since I just heard she pointed directly at Ashido, saying you're doing this for fun. Parkour and free running might be used interchangeably, but they are not the same. Free running is for giving a show, while parkour is simply going from A to B through any environment as quickly as possible. While you're allowed, and even encouraged, to have fun, we will not be doing any pointless wall runs, somersaults or other moves like that. Both Izuku and Ashido were apparently caught off guard enough by that change in mood, as Fuwa-senpai noticed and moved back to talking in a softer tone. I guess Aizawa-sensei has rubbed off on me more than I thought. Given your reaction and anticipation for a ruse, I guess you two are in class 1 then. Speaking of, I'm kind of jealous that Aizawa-sensei didn't pull his expel, but Ren will later move on anyone in your class. A knock on the door ended that conversation, and Mirio-senpai started moving everyone along. Looks like Ectoplasm-sensei is here, time to get moving folks. I hope you two brought a tracksuit or something like that, haha. They eventually found themselves on a large platform standing in the middle of what Izuku thought was probably the ground gamma that had been mentioned online. It seemed to be based off of a highly dense, industrialized area, with most things consisting of concrete or metal and lots of pipes, like way more exposed pipes than would ever be necessary. When they arrived, the others immediately went off on their own with a clone of Ectoplasm Sensei following suit. Fuwa-senpai on the other hand beckoned them to come towards one end of the platform. Since you two are here for the first time, I'm going to lead you through the rookie trail. We've actually set up a few trails with colored markers, but those are just suggestions. Try sticking to them in the future until I'm convinced that you know what you're doing though. Now then, Fuwa-senpai stretched her hands, now covered by fingerless gloves, and jumped off the platform onto a lower building. Follow my lead. After a few tense minutes and a quick moment to see if both him and Ashido could properly roll after a fall, they arrived to what appeared to be one of Ground Gamma's main streets, as the building they were standing on had a 9-meter-long gap between it and the building on the opposite side, and they were standing about 5 stories above the asphalt. They were suddenly addressed by Fuwa-senpai. Your first optional challenge is right here. This jump isn't doable for normal people unless you use some sort of boost. If you want, you can try to figure out how to jump this distance using your quirk, if that's possible of course. Otherwise you'll just have to use the stairs in this building and get to the other side the long way around. Ashido pouted. No way am I gonna chicken out. I finally get to use my quirk for this, so I'm gonna do this. While she started thinking, Izuku decided to do the same. I don't have my special souls with me, so I wouldn't be able to use solar wind to boost myself across this time. Maybe I should try to find a less noticeable and lower power alternative, while I'm at it anyway. As he thought about the special souls, his mind wandered to the other events that had happened back at Mei-chan's house, and he got reminded of the time he got stuck to that metal beam. I think I know how to do it. Ashido seemed to have finished as well. Ditto over here. Fuwa-senpai simply smiled and motioned towards the gap. Go right ahead, I'll follow shortly after you. Izuku had positioned himself over a slightly angled metal sheet and focused on his magnetic field. Alright, turn up the magnitude until I'm firmly stuck to the metal, and then abruptly reverse the polarity. As he reversed it, he got silently catapulted at an upwards angle, and Izuku successfully reached the opposite side with room to spare, as he fell into a cushioning roll. He then looked back to see Ashido preparing a run-up while sliding over some of her acid for faster speeds, and then jumping off of a slight ramp. Izuku got a bit of a scare when she seemed to be coming just short of making the distance, and he peered over the edge to see Ashido somehow stuck to the side of the building. She looked up and grinned. Don't worry Midori, it's all going according to plan. I coated my fingers with strong acid which quickly made some grooves in this wall for me to stick to. He chuckled, lying down flat on the roof and reaching down to help her up along the final bit, until the edge of the roof suddenly seemed to break off, and they both started falling to the ground below. This wasn't really Izuku's proudest moment as, despite his quick-thinking nature, he just kinda froze up, emitted a surprisingly harmonizing scream with Ashido, and simply braced for impact until a soft splashing noise came from below, and the ground that was getting closer by the second, suddenly erupted into a white foam. They both softly landed on it, and as Izuku and Ashido tried to reorient themselves, they heard a familiar laugh coming from nearby. Finally finding an upright position and freeing his face from the encompassing white material, he saw Mirio-senpai clapping as he walked towards them. Great show as always, Fuwakumai. I just had to show up to see this. The newbie's reactions to that always makes me crack up, haha. Izuku got confused and looked towards Fuwa-senpai, who was jumping off the building she'd still been standing on and shot some liquid down below, which quickly erupted into the same white foam upon impact, which she gracefully landed on as it quickly dissolved below her feet. She walked up to them and brushed the foam they were struggling to get out of with her fingertips, which quickly dissolved on her touch again as she gave a gentle chuckle. I'm sorry you two, but that scenario was our little hazing procedure. That edge has a hidden mechanism that loosens it so anyone on it will fall off. If both of you had made it fully across, I'd simply have gotten you to step towards the edge, so either way you would have fallen off. Her smile suddenly turned slightly toothy. Besides hazing, it functions as a nice little learning moment. Knowing what it feels like to fall from a great height without having any safety precautions set up can be really eye-opening. This way you know what to expect if it actually happens in the future. Izuku blanched at the familiar smile and noticed Ashido doing the same. You can really tell she's known Aizawa sensei for over a year. Fuwa-senpai returned to her softer smile. I hope there are no hard feelings from you two though. With my quirk you were never really in any actual danger anyway. At the mention of her quirk, Izuku perked up and grabbed his portable notebook. Yes, he totally has those for emergency notes. Oh yeah, what was that? It looked like you can generate a bunch of foam, but I was wondering what you can do with it all. It's no problem, Midoriya-kumai. I can answer your questions to make up for that little situation I put you two in. Fuwa-senpai pointed her hand to a nearby wall. My fingers produce a special liquid that I can shoot out at will. She then proceeded to demonstrate as a little bit of colorless liquid shot from her index finger. When this liquid encounters an obstacle, it will rapidly start expanding, which turns it into foam. The small amount of liquid hit the wall and quickly expanded to cover about a square meter of it in the white foam. Just a few millimeters of liquid is already enough to completely cover a regular person. She walked up to the covered wall and brushed the foam with her hand again. To avoid getting myself caught in it, my sweat contains a counteracting substance that dissolves the foam shortly after contact. She looked back at Izuku and Ashido. I prefer to think of it as cotton though. This foam is a lot more solid and sturdier than regular foam, and it also sounds less synthetic. Izuku beamed at the explanation. Well, Fuwa-senpai, there are so many useful applications for that. You could use it to cushion your own or other people's impacts. Or you could use it to hinder, slow down, or even completely trap your opponents. If you got some of the liquid inside cracks, you could even force doors and walls open or move debris apart. Oh, and can fires be extinguished using certain thicker foams too? He paused when he heard a soft giggle and looked up from his notebook at Fuwa-senpai, who was addressing Mirio-senpai. Oh, you weren't kidding about this one, huh, Mirio-senpai? You should get back to doing your own thing though, the fun part is over now. She waved him off and put her attention back on him and Ashido as she walked to the nearby building they had just fallen off of. You about covered all the things I've come up with myself. But you missed one of them. Fuwa-senpai winked before running straight at the wall, splashing some of the foam liquid on the ground in front of her, which rapidly expanded right when she moved over it, launching her upwards where she grabbed onto the roof's ledge with her forward momentum, and pulled herself up. Izuku looked at the ledge in awe, and Ashido was about to walk to the building's entrance to find the stairs until Fuwa-senpai's face appeared over the ledge. Don't try the stairs just yet. This is the second optional challenge of this route. Try climbing up using your quirks. They both looked at the completely smooth, featureless 5-story tall wall and groaned. Despite the distance, Izuku thought he could see Fuwa-senpai giving a playful grin before disappearing from view, though that might have just been his imagination. Ashido had already started climbing, melting grooves into the wall with her fingers again. Izuku looked at the wall and realized Fuwa-senpai had never specified it had to be this building's wall, so he looked around and noticed that the building left to it, though it was equally smooth, had several metal pipes joined side to side going all the way to the top. He approached the pipes and put both his hands on them, making his hands stick to the surface with his field. He then did the same for his feet, and carefully dialed back his field strength in his right hand, detaching it and moving it up before sticking it to the pipes again. Next came his right foot, and then he moved on to his left side. When he started reaching the top, he had gotten into a good rhythm, and it turned out to be less of a chore than he had expected at first, arriving at the same time as Ashido. Fuwa-senpai greeted them again with a thumbs up and another soft smile. You two have done great so far. She stood up and jumped down onto a nearby balcony behind the building. We're only slightly over halfway done though, so let's get moving. Izuku grinned at Ashido, and she returned the favor as they both followed suit. Wednesday, April 14, 2151. This afternoon it was Yamomo, Todoroki and Izuku himself that were leading the sparring at Dagaba. Izuku had been pleased when he realized that the Gen Ed students had been recommending the GESFP to their classmates, since more people had started showing up over the days. It was currently pretty late though, only Amomo still had a group to help out, and Izuku decided this was the time to try something he'd been thinking of for the past week as he approached Todoroki. "Ah, Todoroki-san, before you leave for the day I wanted to ask you something." Todoroki, stoic as ever, simply blinked at him, which Izuku didn't think was a dismissal, so he continued. "I was hoping to ask you for a favor, but you probably don't want that, so instead I'd like to spar with you first. If I win I get to ask you for that favor, and otherwise I'll leave you alone." Todoroki cocked an eyebrow. "Depending on the favor I'd try and do it anyway, but if you want to spar with me, oh whoops. Well, I haven't sparred with Todoroki yet, so it'll be fun anyway." Izuku clapped his hands. "One rule though before we begin. Causing collateral damage to the trash here means you automatically forfeit." Todoroki shrugged, and Izuku had to dodge as a trail of ice nearly missed him. "Oh, so no starting signal huh?" They went back and forth for a bit until Izuku suddenly slipped. Crap, he iced the whole area while I wasn't looking. A barrage of ice that was much larger than any of the ones Todoroki had sent out before was rapidly approaching him, and Izuku instinctively turned his aura up a ton. In the end the ice couldn't even hit him as it melted before it could get close enough. Izuku took a moment to breath and saw Todoroki panting as well, shivering from the ice he'd been making. The most Todoroki had accomplished was getting Izuku completely wet from the molten ice, though even that was already quickly evaporating because of the heat. After that long back and forth he did notice a considerable weakness. It appears Todoroki can only generate ice from his right side, so if I start targeting his left. While Todoroki was still panting, Izuku rolled to Todoroki's left and lunged at him only for a wall of fire to erupt from his left, startling Izuku, and forcing him to jump backwards. What the? He can use fire as well. Wait, why did I jump backwards? I can survive plasma at temperatures that rival those on the surface of the sun. Now that I think about it, I'm a pretty bad matchup for Todoroki with my quirk. Izuku backed up against a metal fridge and turned up his magnetic field in preparation for a launch. I might not have to worry about his fire, but he's definitely warming up from it and getting back his stamina, so I'll have to pull a surprise move to finish this. Reversing the polarity, Izuku launched himself directly towards Todoroki, who had blocked himself from seeing Izuku with his fire, and hurled straight through it, tackling Todoroki to the ground. Todoroki tried to ice Izuku up while in his hold, but Izuku just evaporated the ice whenever it touched him, and Todoroki eventually tapped out. Izuku got off of him and fell on the sand. "Holy wow Todoroki-san, I didn't know you could actually use fire. I just thought you could increase your ice's temperature to quickly get rid of it." Todoroki had a conflicted look on his face as he looked at his left hand. "There haven't been any situations at UA where fire would have helped me out yet, but that just now was more of a reflex anyway. I don't particularly like using fire for personal reasons, so I save it only for when it's actually necessary, and I'd rather not use it at all. But I made an oath to someone I looked up to a long time ago, so I'll keep using it for them." The mood had suddenly gotten pretty somber, so Izuku decided to move things along. "Well anyway, that was an awesome fight Todoroki-kun. Can I call you that?" A nod from the Stoke team was enough confirmation for him. "Great, so about that favor of mine." Saturday, April 17, 2151. The rest of the week had passed much quicker than Izuku had expected. His second session at the Urban Parkour Club with Ashido was really fun, when Suwa-senpai made it clear that there were no more hazings awaiting them, and he really thought he was rapidly progressing with using his metal repulsion technique for maneuvering dents in indoor areas. The beach cleanup had been going pretty well too, as more Gen Ed students, a few support students in need of some scrap for tinkering at home, and even other hero students started showing up. No doubt the promise of potential beach parties had been spreading through the student body like a wildfire. After a full day of being at Tagaba Beach, Izuku had been dragged away by Maid-chan again to help her field test some of her babies for the sports festival. "No spoiling my babies to the other students, 0.con." Maid-chan had been busy extinguishing a fire created by one of her spherical-shaped laser drones in the field, located in the forested area near her house, where they had been testing her inventions, as he heard a notification coming from his phone. Checking his line, he saw that the message had been from Todoroki-kun. He started grinning and looked up at Maid-chan, who had just finished stamping out the last embers. "Maid-chan, if I remember correctly it's your birthday tomorrow, right?" Maid-chan looked up from the burnt patch of grass with a look of confusion. You know that. I don't think I even bothered telling you." Izuku sheepishly scratched the back of his head. "I kinda got bored last week and went through your stuff including your calendar. Anyway, I was hoping you got some free time tomorrow. Have you ever had a private tour of Endeavor Support Company?" The increasingly excited look crossing Maid-chan's face gave him enough of an answer, and he started chuckling as he got tackled on the ground and into a bear hug. Sunday, April 18, 2151. Izuku kind of regretted telling Maid-chan about the impromptu excursion in the late afternoon, as she had been too excited to actually sleep. He eventually found some sleeping pills that Maid-chan had laying around in her bedroom, and gave them to her. Mate-chan, you won't be able to enjoy anything if you're busy vibrating out of your own body the entire time. And now Izuku found himself in front of the Endeavor Support Company, which was really just part of the Endeavor Agency, located in Shizuoka City. The actual factories were spread across several cities all over Japan. Besides Mate-chan, he had also brought along Koch-chan, since his birthday would be the following Tuesday on the 20th, and they really wouldn't have any time to celebrate anything then. Besides, Todoroki-kun said he was allowed to bring 2 people, and Koch-chan did respect Endeavor's hero work, so he agreed to come along. There's no damn way I'm letting you 2 fanboying gremlins run around in there without keeping you on a fucking leash. Izuku was actually surprised that Todoroki-kun had managed it in the end. Sure, as Endeavor's son there was a much higher chance of succeeding than if Izuku himself had just come up to Endeavor, but it was still a surprise that they were getting a private tour. Normally the R&D division of Endeavor's agency was off limits, even for normal agency tours. Looking up, Izuku marveled at the sheer scale of the agency. The skyscraper definitely gave off an air of power and professionalism, but the highly stylized flaming E above the entrance did put a bit of a damper on that sense of professionalism. Upon entering the building they found themselves in an open reception area with a few civilians lounging around, and your typical disinterested receptionist sitting behind the desk. Not knowing what to do, Izuku started walking up to the receptionist until he noticed Todoroki-kun entering the room from the corner of his eye. Izuku gave a quick wave upon seeing him and walked over, his friends following suit. Hey Todoroki-kun, I probably should have asked for more information yesterday, but I'm happy to see you here. Todoroki-kun stared at the 3 rivals and shrugged. I'm just here to get you to the R&D department and to confirm to the head researcher that you're allowed in, so don't think much of it. I've never bothered exploring father's agency, so this might take a while. They got into a nearby elevator and started going up. The R&D was pretty far up apparently, and the elevator ride was getting awkward with Todoroki-kun silently scrolling on his phone, Koch-chan's impatient crackles of his quirk, and Mei-chan's constant vibrating, so Izuku spoke up. Say Todoroki-kun, I didn't actually expect Endeavor to allow this. Did you have to do something for him? I'm sorry if I caused you too much trouble with that request. Todoroki-kun eyed him and pocketed his phone. I was expecting difficulties, yes. Father has kept his work and home life separated for most of my childhood, so I didn't expect him to agree. He seemed displeased at first and asked me who requested it, but when I gave him your name, he just huffed and told me to alert the head researcher in advance myself. The elevator dinged and they stepped out, Izuku nearly banging his head against the reinforced door that was standing just a meter or 2 in front of elevator doors. Todoroki-kun gave a deadpan and moved to a panel on the side, which was probably an intercom, and spoke through it. Kikuchi-san, they're here. A man of few words, about what I expected from Todoroki-kun. It took another minute of waiting, but the reinforced door suddenly slid open, revealing a man with a similar build to Endeavor with black hair and a buzz cut, and wearing your typical lab coat and safety goggles, though he appeared to have normal glasses underneath the goggles as well. Unlike Endeavor though, this man seemed to have a pretty eager, open demeanor when he addressed them. Ah, it's the teenagers Todoroki-kun told me about. Come in please. Quickly, these doors only stay open for a few seconds, and I've had a few colleagues get their hair stuck in it. Not that I can relate. He smirked and pointed at his own head, and they quickly followed him in. Where are my manners? My name is Teton Hikish. I'm the head researcher at R&D. Normally my schedule is packed, but I just couldn't resist showing some younglings around. This hasn't really happened before, you know. Right behind the reinforced door was a pretty normal looking lounge area. Izuku looked at his companions and noticed that Todoroki-kun hadn't come in with them. I guess he wasn't lying when he said he'd only get us to this place. Hikish suddenly turned around and eyed Izuku. So you're the kid that initially asked for the tour, Midoriya, right? He gave a nod of affirmation. You're good, just one last check. From what I know, Todoroki-kun doesn't always pay a lot of attention when it isn't needed, so I wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't looked up from his phone at all when he brought you here. Your name does sound familiar though. Oh well, we don't have any time to waste. They walked into a hallway adjacent to the lounge area where a bunch of different items were put on display. Here we keep all our support items on display. Not for the public to look at of course since they can't come here, but it's nice to see our accomplishments in one place whenever we're going to work. It gives a pretty motivating feeling. The support items seemed to be getting older as they went further through the hallway, and they eventually got to blast doors, with one final display right in the middle of the hallway housing. Oh my god, is that Endeavor's original hero costume from when he debuted? It seemed Mei-chan's outburst had startled both Izuku and the researcher, but Hikish seemed to calm down pretty quickly. Ah yes it is. Honestly it doesn't really fit here since it was designed before this place even existed, but it does have to do with how this place was created. Izuku perked up. Really? I just thought that Endeavor decided to get his own independent support engineers when he graduated and took over the agency, his mentor headed. There's a bit more to it than that. You see, normally agencies get a contract with a larger hero support company, but Endeavor had a lot of trouble getting a reliable suit that could survive the constant heat he generated from the one his mentor's agency was contracted with. After several inadequate attempts and eventually finding out that the support company he was getting his suits from didn't even have a single fire quirk user employed, he got fed up and decided to take things into his own hands. Apparently, he hired a bunch of scientists and engineers from all over Japan who he thought would understand how to help him, and gave them a secure spot in his growing agency in their own secure R&D department. Hikishin felt around in his lab coat's pockets and pulled out some goggles. Now let's head in. You'll need these of course, since experiments can get quite dangerous. The blast doors opened and inside was quite a hectic display. Multiple people in lab coats walking around each other, several things were on fire, controlled hopefully, and rock music was being played loudly from a boombox in the corner. They looked back at the researcher to see him awkwardly scratching his head. Okay, so maybe part of the danger is coming from us and not the experiments, but hey, we need to have some fun too. We spend a lot of our time in this place, and this whole lab is fireproof anyway. Mei-chan didn't really seem to care about any of the hazards, and was already wandering off when she got pulled back by the scruff of her shirt. Hold on Missy, we signed liability waivers, but you three didn't, so stay behind the safety tape please. Mei-chan huffed and pouted cute, but complied. Eventually they were led through the lab and ended up in a room labeled Head Researcher's Office, which honestly looked pretty similar to Mei-chan's room in the support studio, but slightly less charred. There were a few blueprints laying on a desk, and Mei-chan's eyes seemed to light up in recognition. Hikishin spoke up first though. Now I remember where I recognize your name from, Midoriya-kun. You're the kid we had to build and test that hero suit for. Not much correcting was needed from our side though, since the blueprint was basically top grade already. Mei-chan started vibrating again, grabbed Izuku's shoulders and started shaking him. Oh, that's me. I made that. Mei Hatsumi, Hatsumi. Hikishin chuckled. You've got some real fire in your corner, Midoriya-kun. Seriously though, I was wondering if you pranked us and had Powloader make the blueprint instead, so good job. The only modification we had to make was adding our patented solarium. How did he just voice that? Getting out of that train of thought, Izuku just realized what the researcher had said. Wait, so my hero costume is actually made with solarium? Wait, how'd I just voice that? I mean, now that I think about it, it's obvious since it survived my quirk for so long already. In the scientific world, solarium is the only material that can survive temperatures like those at the surface of the sun. Hikishin agreed. Yes, the reason the request was sent to us was because of your quirk. Not gonna lie, when we saw the data of the quirk we needed to accommodate for, we collectively gulped. It's not every day that you see one that can push the boundary of what our miracle material can handle. Izuku hung his head. Sorry for the inconvenience. Koch-chan scat in the background and he received a slap on his head. Hikishin was the one to respond though before Koch-chan could speak up. No worries, seeing how solarium fares with your quirk will be great for future development, especially if quirks keep getting more powerful over time. No asking about it any further though, it's the one thing we're pretty tight-lipped about here. Honestly, even if you see the actual formulas you'll still scratch your head. I have no idea how Endeavor's original support partner worked it out in the first place. He focused on the trio again. Enough from me though, do you have any questions? Surprisingly, it was Koch-chan that asked the first question. Yeah, where the fuck do you test all this shit on people? Mei-chan huffed in indignance. Don't talk to these amazing people in that way, Pomeranian-kun. Yes, that was the name she gave Koch-chan. He didn't particularly like the nickname. I'll speak however the fuck I want, goggles. Oh no, it's another nickname off again. Before I could devolve further, Hikishin intervened. Ladies, you're both pretty. As for your question though, you're looking at the test dummy right now. Izuku blinked and looked behind the researcher only to find a wall. Hikishin chuckled. My quirk makes me the perfect test dummy. You see, I have amazing heat and fire resistance, but due to a freak defect, my heat receptors on my skin still use the temperature scale of a regular person. Izuku's hands itched for a notebook, but they weren't allowed to bring any items like that with them. So you still feel like you're being burned when you're on fire? Yes, exactly. Don't worry though, I have a pretty high pain tolerance, and I'm in no actual danger of being burnt, but it makes me an excellent human test dummy. They were shown a few of the testing chambers, but the tour eventually ended when the display room they had just returned to got hotter by a few degrees. Not that Izuku could know that, he only realized when he noticed Koch-chan and Mei-chan sweating more than before. Hikishin perked up though and turned around, and Izuku finally saw the source of the heat as Endeavor himself, wreathed in his flames and donning his hero costume, walked into the lab. The researcher quickly walked up to the pro. Endeavor-sama, I wasn't expecting you to visit yet. You only check up on our progress at the end of the month. Endeavor huffed. It's supposed to be unexpected. Don't think I never noticed that you all clean up your messes the day before I normally visit. Hikishin shrunk back a bit, but quickly turned around and started shoving Izuku and his friends to the entrance door. Alright you three, I think that marks the end of your tour. You know the way out already. Hope you had fun, bye. The whole time they were being escorted out, Izuku felt someone's gaze piercing his back. When they eventually got shoved out the reinforced entrance doors, he turned around to see Endeavor giving an undecipherable stare directly at him, right before the doors closed shut again. Tuesday, April 20th, 2151. Izuku was pretty excited about today. As they grew older, his and Koch-chan's birthdays had gotten less childish, and at this point, it was usually just him spending the night at Koch-chan's place for a sleepover. He wasn't quite able to leave UA yet though, even if classes had just ended. Instead he found himself going to the 1H support studio. During heroics the day before, Aizawa-sensei had given them an optional assignment before starting the class. Alright class, this will be the last introductory heroics lesson before we delve into more of the specifics. Everyone shuffled around nervously as Aizawa-sensei walked to a large covered table set up in the middle of the gym and removed the cloth, showing a bunch of different weapons laid out on it. For some of you this will sound redundant, but I want every single one of you to try and choose a weapon to work with before this lesson ends. Aizawa-sensei tugged on his catcher scarf. Since my quirk doesn't directly aid me in fighting, I need to make use of a weapon to win fights. Some of you will be facing the same problems because of your quirk, so I highly advise those people to take this seriously. He then focused on Izuku, Koch-chan and Todoroki-kun specifically. Though even for those of you that don't have this problem, I still encourage you to do the same. If you ever come across a situation where your quirk can be used without seriously endangering yourself or civilians, or if an opponent has the perfect counter for it, having a weapon you know how to use well will be a literal lifesaver. You might be able to win using just quirkless hand-to-hand combat skills, but if your opponent can use their quirk or has a weapon, then you'd be severely disadvantaged. He then addressed the entire class again. There wouldn't be any further classes focusing on wielding specific weapons beyond this introductory one for a while, so I hope that all of you will keep at it outside school hours. There are a few facilities near the main building where you can ask for further lessons on most of the weapons laid out on this table, so make use of them, or don't. There are sadly too many pros who purely rely on their quirks. Izuku personally really liked the bow staff and the tonfas, purely for their simplicity and lack of danger, unlike knives or guns, though they weren't allowed to use guns yet, but also for how they could work with his magnetic field if they were made from metal. While it was true that he might not always be able to use Starborn's full functionality, mainly his heat and plasma abilities, if he was in a flammable and explosive environment, he'd still be able to use his magnetic field, unless he was under a quirk suppressing effect. Though if he really got into a situation like that, he'd have much more stressful things to worry about, mainly the whole burping fiasco followed by fainting and potentially death. Luckily, besides Aizawa-sensei's erasure, there weren't really any ways of suppressing a quirk. If there were, then the police would be using those on every villain they detained, instead of having to come up with numerous ways of countering someone's quirk. He liked the idea of a bow staff or tonfa so much that he decided to skip out on today's urban parkour gathering. He did notify Fuwa Senpai beforehand, of course, to discuss the possibilities with Mei-chan. Due to their simplicity, there were a lot of functionalities you could add onto it. Izuku was even toying with the idea of having a bow staff that could split up and turn into tonfas, just so he could have his cake and eat it too, but he was getting ahead of himself. Mei-chan had been pretty receptive to the whole idea, though Izuku was kind of wondering if he had bought her undying loyalty with the whole private tour of Endeavor's support company thing. And I'm wondering if we could convince those guys to give us some solarium. Does Mei-chan realize she's pronouncing the two to make the weapon out of so it doesn't get destroyed by using your quirk 0-pointer-kun? Izuku smiled at how excited Mei-chan was being about the whole idea, but he kept being distracted by muffled yells and other concerning sounds. They definitely weren't coming from the 1H studio though, so he couldn't do much about it. That sounds like a great idea, Mei-chan. It's getting late though, and you can brainstorm ideas back at home, so I'll be forcing you out of the studio now, if you don't come with me willingly. She groaned but complied. After Izuku was sure that Mei-chan was far enough away from the studio to not sneak back in once he left, he decided to check in on the noises. Though the noises had stopped not too long ago, he thought they came from the 1F support studio, so he walked up to the blast doors, and was surprised when they were still unlocked. As he peeked his head through the crack, he noticed that basically all the 1F support students had gone home already. Maybe it was just someone's experiment gone wrong, and they just left in the hopes that their teacher won't find out who did it. Izuku was about to turn around when he heard an almost inaudible sob coming from one of the student rooms. At the sound, he ran over to the room only to notice that it was in quite a chaotic state. In the corner of the room sat a small, trembling, curled-up figure with curly black hair, and Izuku ran up to Akatani as calmly as possible, and squatted to get on eye level. "Akatani-san, are you alright?" Apparently he had been a bit too quiet as Akatani jerked up, revealing blotchy red eyes, before quickly burrowing them in his arms up again. "Please just leave, it's nothing to worry about," he huffed in response. "I'm not just gonna leave you like this. What happened in here?" Akatani remained silent. "Can I at least help you up and into that chair?" The corner of the room doesn't sound very comfortable. A silent nod was all he got as an answer, and he quickly pulled a desk chair, which had been toppled onto the ground, back up. As he guided Akatani from his prior position to the chair though, he accidentally brushed past his arms, which elicited a hiss from Akatani. "Oh crap, I'm sorry." Akatani saw. It was then that he noticed some red discoloration of the skin peeking out from under the uniform sleeve. "Akatani-san, how'd you get that burn?" Akatani flinched, and Izuku was only just able to guide him into the chair. "It's just from a stupid accident." Izuku furrowed his brows. I don't see anything here that could give you a burn like that. Besides, you seem more like the idea type than the building type and please just go, I'll be fine in a bit. I'm not just gonna leave you when you have injuries, Akatani-san. You need to see a recovery girl at least. Did somebody hurt you? I heard yelling not too long ago. It was Izuku paused when he noticed Akatani getting even paler and breathing even heavier. Oh crap, is he experiencing a panic attack? Danjit Izuku, you idiot. Oh crap, Akatani, I'm so sorry. Do you know anyone I can bring here? He heard a slight mumble under the panicked breaths, and he leaned closer. Whoa, Rushi CH-chan, please. Oh, right. Izuku turned around and bolted out of the 1F studio, and ran to the 1G studio. I hope she's still here. Danjit, how stupid can I be? Oh, thank God it's still open. Izuku didn't care if someone was standing right behind the blast doors as he slammed them open. Is Yandeki still here? He mentally sighed in relief when the split ponytail girl peeked her head out from one of the rooms. Hello Midoriya, no need to shout, I heard you loud and clear. Did you need some? Akatani's having a panic attack. Yandeki's face turned into a concerned frown. That's no good, come on let's go. And ran right past him, grabbing his hand and forcing him to run back with her. Akatani hadn't really moved from his chair when they arrived, and Yandeki immediately ran up and put her hands on his shoulders. SHHH, I'm here Mikumo. Calm breaths. Calm breaths. Can you tell me 5 colors you're seeing right now? As Yandeki went through a clearly practiced method of calming someone down, Izuku paused to look more closely at his surroundings. There were several screens on the wall, with one of them slightly cracked and multiple half-burned papers on the ground. More burned things. I don't think I like where this is going. Apparently Yandeki had succeeded in calming down Akatani enough to start asking him questions. Mikumo, who did this to you? He squirmed under her gaze. I don't want to say. He glanced at Izuku. Oh, that's definitely not a good sign. Yandeki sighed in resignation. I guess it was naive to think that this wouldn't happen at UA eventually, huh? Izuku spoke up in confusion. Can I know what you're talking about? Akatani and Yandeki shared a look, but there was no denial coming from Akatani, so Yandeki turned back to Izuku with a scowl on her face. What I mean with this is some quickest asshole learning that Mikumo here is quirkless, and then giving him shit for it. Izuku was a bit taken aback by the uncharacteristically fierce expression on her face, and he put the unfortunate puzzle pieces together as he looked at Akatani. Was it Kakbakum? The flinch of the name was enough of an answer, and Izuku had to sit himself on the ground in disbelief. I know he has quite a bit of a temper, but actually attacking someone over something. Before he could think about it any further, he got snapped out of it, when a murderous aura filled the room, as Yandeki palmed her fist and cracked her knuckles. Thanks for the info Midoriya, I hope you don't mind if I had a word with him about Mikumo. Izuku was still a bit shocked at the normally cheery girl's demeanor doing a full 180, but managed to speak back. Wait, hold on, I should be the one to talk to him. Yandeki shot him a doubtful look. If you're saying this because you think a girl like me would get hurt against a big bad wolf, then go ask Mikumo's middle school bullies how they were faring after I had a word with them. He paled at the images she was invoking. I get the feeling that she didn't just lie down and take it when those 2 expelled support students gave her those chemical burns, but responded. Kakbakum's my childhood friend, so this is my responsibility. Besides, I need to hear his explanation for what happened here myself. She still didn't look convinced but relented. Ugh, fine, I can tell that you're the type who would put this off for forever though, so if I see that you haven't talked with him yet before the sports festival begins this Friday, then I'll be having words with him anyway, preferably during the tournament round, if that's what it takes. Izuku carefully nodded, and he felt the tension disappear as quickly as it had appeared. Alrighty, I'll hold you to that Midoriya. She flashed a toothy smile and turned around to Akatani. Could you help me bring Mikumo to Recovery Girl before you leave? He's heavier than he looks, and I don't want to disturb the remaining bandages I still have. Not if I almost get to finally take them off. He nodded and draped one of Akatani's arms over his right shoulder for support, while Yandeki did the same on the other side. Alright Mikumo, let's get you to RG and then home. Would you mind if I stayed with you and made some hot cocoa before your dad comes home tonight? Izuku noticed Akatani blushing, but decided to stay out of their personal matters as they walked to the nurse's office. He had a lot of thinking to do once he got home though. Wednesday, April 21st 2151. Izuku didn't end up going to Koch-chan's house for his birthday's annual sleepover that night. Koch-chan had definitely noticed though, as his mood was worse than usual when homeroom started that day. He didn't confront Izuku about his absence though, and well, Izuku wasn't really ready to confront Koch-chan about what had happened to Akatani yesterday either. Sue him, he hoped that there had been some sort of misunderstanding, and that it wasn't what it looked like, but there was that gnawing bit of doubt in the back of his mind that he didn't want validated once he did end up talking to him. To get his mind off of things for now, Izuku had been walking to one of the smaller buildings on the campus. Now normally first years didn't really have any business going where Izuku was going, but he had his reasons. Entering the building, he started looking for the signature mask and cowboy hat of Snipe, who should be here on the Wednesday afternoons. Luckily it didn't take too long as Snipe eventually approached him instead. Howdy, what's a first year like you doing in a place like the ranch? Hello Snipe Sensei, was hoping to use the dynamic shooting range for the foreseeable future. Because of Snipe's mask, Izuku was forced to imagine the facial gestures, and because of the silence, Izuku envisioned a court eyebrow. You do know we don't teach all first years how to shoot firearms, right? Of course, Snipe Sensei, I wasn't actually saying I wanted to use a gun on the range. Izuku took the silence as his sign to elaborate. Right, so I actually have 2 separate ranged moves in my arsenal, and I realized that I won't really have any opportunity during the heroics lessons this term to practice shooting targets with them, so I was hoping to work on them here under supervision, of course. Again, because of the mask, Izuku was forced to imagine a stoic face suddenly lighting up into a smile as Snipe spoke up. Of course Midoriya, I like your initiative. It's great to see one of you first years really putting in the extra work, plus ultra and all. Now I assume your quirk is not that much like a gun, so I'm not sure how well my advice would work for you. But wait a few more minutes, and then the dynamic shooting range will be available for a little while. The dynamic shooting range turned out to be really fun. It was set up like an underground bunker, with several maintenance tunnels and targets hiding and moving around, and Izuku had to get from the center to the open exit. It was pretty interesting how UA really loved using robots wherever they could, as the targets weren't stuck on pre-built tracks. For his first run, the difficulty was set at the bare minimum, which meant less aggressive and slower moving targets, with the exit relatively close by, and Izuku was loving it. He may or may not have whooped and cackled several times as his solar flares knocked a target out. When he came out, he got some feedback from Snipe about his form and a few corrections to his aiming, and he was then put right back in, at his request of course. In the end, he hoped that no one else wanted to use the range, as he was eventually forced to stop by Snipe, because it was officially UA's closing time. As he walked home, he had mostly forgotten about the impending Koch-chan conversation, and was feeling pretty good. Thursday, April 22nd, 2151. The good feeling didn't last for that long though, as Aizawa-sensei told Koch-chan to stay after class when the last bell rang. Izuku wasn't normally one to eavesdrop, but he was a bit curious. Maybe Aizawa-sensei somehow knew about what happened, and was going to talk to Koch-chan about it. That'd hopefully save him from doing the talking himself, and Izuku didn't have any time to push it off again, since the festival was tomorrow already. Hopefully Fuwa-senpai didn't mind him skipping both sessions this week. The sounds were a bit muffled behind the door, but Aizawa-sensei still spoke clearly enough for Izuku to understand what he was saying. Alright Bakum, I got you the papers you need to fill in to request a support partner change. I think it's a bit illogical to do it this early in the year, but it happens at least once every year. Normally I'd bring it to Nezu to finalize it, but I'm busy preparing for the sports festival right now, so you'll have to do it yourself. The grunt of agreement alerted Izuku to the fact that Koch-chan was about to come through the door, and he quickly ducked behind a nearby corner to avoid getting discovered. What did Aizawa-sensei mean with support partner change? This has to do with what happened to Akatani then, but I'm still no closer to knowing what happened. I guess I don't have a choice then. He carefully trailed Koch-chan as they left the Hero Department Tower, and got closer to the principal's office, and when Izuku finally saw the sign indicating they were nearly there, he sped up and spoke up in a cautiously pompous tone. Kazuki Bakum, I think we need to have a talk. Based on the way Koch-chan tensed up and rigidly turned around to face him, Izuku knew he had mimicked his mom's no more bullshit tone well enough. The rigid posture didn't last long as Koch-chan relaxed a bit and spoke up. Oi Izuku, why the fuck are you stalking me? Also, where the fuck were you on Tuesday, huh? I stayed up way past my normal bedtime waiting for you, and you were a no-show. Izuku stayed calm and repeated himself. I told you already, we need to have a talk about that. He pointed at the papers Koch-chan had been holding. Ha! Why should some stupid paperwork matter to you? Because that stupid paperwork is related to something that happened between you and Akatani in the 1F studio, and I'd like to know what happened because Akatani didn't want to speak up about it. Koch-chan had a puzzled look on his face before it turned into a sneer. Oh, you mean the support nerd? Why the fuck do you care about some stupid extra? At that he turned around and Izuku could tell that Koch-chan wasn't going to continue talking anymore like this, so he darted forward and snatched the papers from him as he passed. Hey, what the fuck, Izuku? Give those back. Izuku crossed his arms and huffed. I'm not giving these back until I'm satisfied with your answer. And don't even think about snatching them back. I can easily burn some papers, just like how you burned some of Akatani's for some reason. Now get talking. What happened between you and Akatani? The annoyed look on Koch-chan's face stayed, but he backed down. TSKY, do you care? Turns out that nerd was looking down on me and was hiding something pretty important, and I decided I didn't want to put up with him any longer. Koch-chan, that doesn't explain the damage to his room, and what you mean with something pretty important? Koch-chan growled but relented and threw his hands up. That stupid shit was hiding the fact he was quirkless. Like hell I'm gonna let some shitty extra who doesn't even know anything about having power design my hero costume, let alone hide that from me. Izuku's hopes at a simple misunderstanding shattered in an instant, and he lost his composure for the first time in forever, as all his doubts and stress from the past week boiled over all at once. Why the fuck does that matter? What about the things he's already done for you, like the things I didn't even think of? And that still doesn't explain why you did all that damage to his room. He tried calming himself down again, but Koch-chan ruined that attempt by speaking up. Izuku, the hell are you getting so worked up about? If you really want to fucking know, that shitty nerd pissed me off because he thought he could just hide it from me. I don't need help from some powerless nerd that has the gall to look down on me, so I pushed him around a bit. You call that pushing around? Half his room was destroyed and he was cowering in the corner with burns on his arm, and then went into a panic attack. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that he's looking down on you. What kind of fucked up logic is that? Koch-chan still had that frustratingly annoyed look on his face as he dismissed the yelling. Jesus Christ, Zuku, I haven't seen you this worked up like ever. Why do you even care about that shitty extra so much anyway? Especially if he really is that weak to let some pushing around scare him that much. Shitty X Izuku tried to calm down again, since he was probably being hurt by anyone close enough. What gives you the right to push someone down just because they lack a quirk, eh? Hey, it's not like I go around deliberately doing that to everyone. Just to those fucking extras with shitty quirks who think they're stronger than us and look down on us. Izuku snapped back. Don't lump me in with this. He paused as he started viewing certain things in a new light. Is that why you call everyone extras? Because you think they're not worth your attention? How long have you been pushing around other people? Koch-chan huffed in annoyance. See, this is why I never did it with you around, Zuku. You're too fucking heroic for your own good, but those fuckers need to know their damn place. Besides, I'll begrudgingly admit that most people in our class are strong enough to at least try, so this was the first time I did it at UA at all. You really think everyone that's weaker than you is worth less than you? Izuku couldn't help but voice his disbelief, and didn't even want to think about how Koch-chan basically just told him that he's been doing it for who knows how long behind his back. Koch-chan growled. Duh, why should I care about anyone who I won't encounter on my path to becoming the #1 hero? But those weak shits who think they can look down on me and force themselves on that path because they think they're just as strong or stronger piss me off. Izuku stepped back, still in shock, as a gut-wrenching realization crossed his mind, which he whispered in horror. What if I had been like Akatani? He was met with an infuriatingly incredulous look. Ha. We back to talking about that quirkless shit again. Why do you still care about that extra? And what the fuck does it even mean? If you're just talking nonsense, then give my papers back already. What if I hadn't been born with a quirk like Starborn? What if I, in your own words, had a weak or useless quirk? Would I have just been another extra to you? Would we have even been friends at all? He could feel his eyes watering as he continued. Damn it, Izuku, not right now. Or if I had been quirkless like Akatani, would you have been my bully? Koch-chan's eyes softened and he reached forward with his hand. What? Of course not. There's no way a friend of mine would have been born with a shitty quirk or worse. Don't call me that. Izuku screamed in alarm and slapped back Kakatsuki's hand, as him not even entertaining the thought practically confirmed his suspicions. Kakatsuki looked taken aback at the outburst, but before he could react, Izuku threw the papers he'd been holding hostage right into his face. You could have your stupid fucking papers back. Katsuki went on the ground to gather all the papers again. Damn it, nerd, what's going on with you, Toda? Shut up, Katsuki, I'm done talking to you. Izuku's voice cracked, and he could already feel his anger high crashing down, as the despair grew, and tried to finish things up before he could break down right then and there. I can't believe what an absolute piece of shit you've been to everyone besides me. He faltered for a second but found his voice again. But I know that you can be a good person if you want to be. And I can tell that you don't even comprehend how fucked up this is, so I'm giving you a chance of fixing it. Izuku tried to hold a fierce pose again, but his trembling and his wavering voice made him fail miserably. Until you realize that everything you just said to me is absolutely disgusting, until you properly apologize to Akatani at the very least, and until I know that Akatani and Jindeki are convinced that the apology is genuine. Until you've done all those things, I'm not talking to you. And with that, Izuku's last embers of anger were spent, and he spun around and ran away to hide his blurring vision. The fuck is Gen? Hey nerd, Izuku, come back. Izuku wasn't listening to anything anymore as multiple thoughts were flitting around his mind. Why didn't I notice anything? How did he even get to this point? Could I have stopped him if I found out? How many red flags did I brush away just because he's been my friend for all these years? Is the only reason that we're friends now because I got lucky? Eventually he stumbled on a janitor's closet, and he shakily sat down between the mops and buckets, as he finally allowed himself to break down in sobs. After what felt like an hour, Izuku's eyes had dried up, and he somehow found his way home and to his room. He dismissed Mom's fretting by saying that he was too emotionally exhausted to talk about it, and locked his bedroom door behind him. He found that he couldn't concentrate on anything besides Katsuki's words, and anything that seemed weird, now that he was looking back on them with these new revelations. In the end, he decided that he couldn't spend the rest of the night like this, until he had to leave for the sports festival in the morning, and crawled out of his window. He knew that practicing parkour in downtown Kurosato probably wasn't safe or legal, but he didn't care as he found the experience quite freeing. During his running through Kurosato, he came across the tattoo and shopping district. His thoughts went back to when he and Kakatsuki had accidentally freed that villain made of sludge, and were forced to hold him back from the crowds that started gathering. He already felt himself getting sad and angry again, but before he could spiral further, he was pulled back from the edge he'd been standing on by a thick material that had wrapped around his body. Before he could panic about someone ambushing him, a familiar voice spoke up. "Why am I not surprised that you are the first I find outside during patrol, problem child?" Izuku was turned around, and Aizawa-sensei's unamused face came into view. "Ah, hello Aizawa. It's Eraserhead when I'm on the field, problem child." "Right, Eraserhead. What are you doing here?" Aizawa-sensei deadpanned. "I'm doing my nightly patrol." Now normally if I found a student of mine during one, I'd ask them what they're doing out this late, but given that it's you, it's nothing, Eraserhead. I just needed to clear my mind before the sports festival Tomoe today. Aizawa-sensei gave him a look over and unwrapped his capture scarf. Then he did something unexpected as he sat down and gestured for Izuku to sit down as well. "You're not a very good liar, problem child. I can tell that you've been thinking about something too much." Izuku carefully sat down on the tiled roof they had found themselves on, and tried to word his next sentence carefully. "Sensei, what would you do if, hypothetically," Aizawa-sensei quirked an eyebrow, "someone you've known for a long time turned out to be not as good of a person as you had thought?" Aizawa-sensei was silent for a few seconds, but indulged Izuku anyway. "First of all, I'd try to figure out if them being a good person to me was an act or not. If they were acting, then I'd leave them immediately. No reason to keep playing pretend with them. If they weren't acting, I would try to understand why they aren't being a good person to others, or why they're being a good person to me specifically, and then use that to see if I can help them be better. If I can, then I'd leave them as well. Trying to exhaust or endanger yourself with helping someone who can't be helped when the consequences aren't severe injury or their death is just illogical." The following silence told Izuku to speak up. I know that this hypothetical person definitely wasn't just acting like a good person to me. And I think they're being a good person to me because my quirk fits with their worldview." It was difficult to see because of the yellow goggles, but Aizawa-sensei's eyes narrowed. "And pray tell, what do you think Bakum's worldview is?" "Eh? Crap, he saw right through me." Having been found out, Izuku dropped the hypothetical part and answered. I think Kakatsuki believes that he's destined to be the strongest. Because they've always told him that he'd be great. And I think he believes that people who aren't strong enough to play a part on his journey to being the greatest are a waste of his time. And if anyone who isn't strong enough believes that they are part of his journey anyway, then he takes that as the mum looking down on him. And because Katsuki doesn't have the greatest temper, he gets air pissed off at them." Aizawa-sensei sighed and rubbed his eyes. "Great, so he has an inferiority complex masked by a superiority complex." Before Izuku could reply, Aizawa-sensei stood up and motioned for him to get down the nearby stairs. Izuku complied and followed when Aizawa-sensei started walking off. "I can tell that there's more to it than just Bakum, bad problem child." Izuku gulped, but Aizawa-sensei wasn't slowing down his pace, so he spoke up anyway. "I don't know. I'm just wondering how much of this is my fault. Did I just reinforce his beliefs because his best and only friend also developed a strong quirk? How many times didn't I notice any weird behavior? How many times did I notice but just dismissed it because he was my friend? Kakatsuki, could I have helped him be a better person if I had known earlier?" Aizawa-sensei looked over his shoulder. "Why do you think you can't start now?" Izuku pouted. "I did start ... I guess. I don't know. I'm not doubting that I can't help him, but it's partially my fault, isn't it? Katsuki got the belief that he's destined to be the greatest from everyone around him, constantly praising him, and I didn't help in that at all, since I was probably the one who told him that the most. HMPF, and there you have it. You're correct in saying that it's not fully his fault, but it was still his choice to keep going after all this time, instead of pausing for a moment to rethink his actions. The problem child, it's in the name, you're both still children." Aizawa-sensei stopped walking and squatted down slightly in front of him. "You said that it isn't fully Bakum's fault because everyone told him it was normal. But you're forgetting that you were in the exact same environment as him, so the things he did show you were normal for you too. It's irrational to expect you to have known, especially if he hid it from you on purpose, albeit for different reasons than actually knowing that what he's doing was wrong." Izuku pondered that last bit. "Hey, hold on, how do you know about the hiding part?" Aizawa-sensei gave an incredulous look. "Your little shouting match happened right outside Nezu's office, and he happens to have a great sense of hearing, not that that was necessary with your volume apparently." Izuku got flustered from that, but Aizawa-sensei continued. "Anyway, if he really doesn't know what he's doing is wrong, then now's the perfect time to show him that, now that he's away from the environment that normalized it for him. From what Nezu told me though, I'm pretty sure you're already on your way there. If I find out about any ongoing bullying or other types of harassment, however, I will punish him accordingly. UA has a strict anti-bullying policy, and misguided thoughts are not an excuse to escape consequences." Izuku's hair got ruffled again by Aizawa-sensei. Was the last time really just over 2 weeks ago? I have the feeling I should have an achievement notification pop up somewhere or something. You're a good kid, Midoriya, and I can tell that you and Bakum are good friends too, so I think it'd be pretty illogical if he didn't start turning things around for you once he's thought about it for a while. He then pointed to his right, and Izuku noticed that they'd walked all the way back to his apartment block. Did he just trick me into being escorted back home? Now go back inside. I'm sure you have some thinking to do as well. If not about Bakum, then about that speech of yours that you'll be giving in a few hours. Now Izuku thought he'd have to fake a realistic reaction to avoid letting Aizawa-sensei know that he knew about the ruse, but in reality he'd completely forgotten about Yamomo's warning after those 2 weeks, and he quickly rushed to the apartment block's entrance in a panic, shouting a quick goodbye to Aizawa-sensei as he did. In the end, Izuku had only been able to come up with a few basic points, with all his conflicting thoughts on Katsuki. He hoped he'd be able to fill in the gaps through improvisation as the sun rose, and he set off to Dagaba Beach first. Upon arrival, he realized that he hadn't really visited the site the past week, except for mindless cleaning, but when he got there he was pleasantly surprised. Most of the Janad and support students he'd seen come and go in the past were gathered at the beach, and beyond some lingering scraps the beach was squeaky clean. Izuku bit back some happy tears as he stepped onto the promenade wall and flashed his oar, getting everyone's attention. Hello everyone. I'm really happy to see so many of you here the morning of the sports festival. When this plan was first thought up, I hadn't really expected many people to come, but I'm glad that turned out to be wrong. This might sound a bit condescending coming from a hero course student for some of you, but I'm proud at all the effort every single one of you have put into the combat training, as well as the actual cleaning. I'm sure that a lot of great parties will be held here over the summer. Everyone cheered and hollered from that, and Izuku smiled. Now then, this beach isn't just going to disappear on us. We have a sports festival to attend. Let's all show the world what we got and go beyond. Plus Ultra echoed through the beach a second time that month, signaling the successful end of the GSFP. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to me, and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-ifs coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination. Goodbye everyone.